What is up? And welcome in. It's another edition of 10,000 Pitches, a podcast devoted to everything Minnesota soccer and beyond. My name is Jeremy Rushing, and with me this week on a quick turnaround, coming off Post Loons just about 10 hours before we're recording here. Really busy week for the guy, but I appreciate him joining me as always for episode 142. It's Dominic Jose Bisogno. Dom, how we doing?
Doing well. I've spent a lot of time talking to my laptop, but no, it was good doing post loons yesterday with Jacob, and would have been nice to have a better result to talk about, but I think we had a good chat. So glad to have done that, and glad to be here doing the podcast.
It is a busy week here at Soda Soccer. A lot of lower league news. Obviously, another 2-match week for Minnesota United. So if you hear me clicking away on my laptop over the course of the episode, don't mind me. Just trying to multitask here, get some stories on the website, some timely stories on the website, while also recording the podcast. So it's busy times indeed. But let's jump into this. We're not going to dive too deep into the results here for Minnesota United. We have MNUFC 2 news. We have lower league news. Minnesota Aurora continue a dominant early run in the USLW League. We get the first ever Battle of the Birds between Rochester and Minneapolis City on the USL League 2 stage. Duluth asserting themselves in the NPSL, UPSL madness, and so much more. But before we get into all those items, just a few housekeeping things before we get started. We are presented by sodasoccer.com, your home for soccer coverage in the North. Make sure you're checking us out at sotasoccer.com. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast feed. Leave us a rating and review if you have not on your preferred platform. And also follow us at SodaSOC on the socials as well, Twitter and Instagram specifically. And if you want to go that next step and directly support our work, all of our content creators are paid for the great hard work that they provide. So if you want to help kind of support that mission and keep us sustainable moving forward, make sure you're checking us out at patreon.com/sodasoccer. It's the lifeblood of what we do. It keeps us going. And for as low as $3 a month, you can support that. If you support us in the $5 or $10 tiers, you get exclusive Minnesota United training and match day tidbits, early access to podcasts and interviews, some bonus content there for you as well. So again, patreon.com/sodasoccer. And we have a goal here in June of 8 more patrons. So if you want to help us achieve our June goal, be one of those 8 patrons that we need to keep reaching our goal and keep us sustainable, make sure you're checking us out. Patreon.com/sodasoccer. All right, headline time, Dom. A draw and a loss this week for Minnesota United. Over the weekend, it was a 1-1 draw with RSL at home, their 4th home draw of the 2023 campaign so far, and then a 2-1 loss in Austin Wednesday night. If you want a full recap and analysis of either of those matches, make sure you're checking out Post Loons, specifically from the Wednesday night match in Austin. Make sure you're checking out the Post Loons podcast if you kind of want to deep dive into that. But Dom, a week that Minnesota didn't get a win, but you're not coming out of this week feeling too negative about their prospects for the future. Kind of an interesting dichotomy there.
Yeah, it's 2 results that at the very least feel like a sort of continued continuity from where this team was with the 2 wins before this week of games. With the game last night, even this 2-1 loss, it felt very much like a very different kind of loss than, say, 4-0 to the Dynamo, 3-0 to SKC. It felt like a productive loss where the team was very competitive, frankly, a little unlucky not to get points out of the game, good individual performances. So it felt more like you could block it together with those 1-0 wins against, Portland, the draw with RSL. It just felt more like a continuous growth period. So in that sense, I think there's some positives to take away. Obviously, would have been better get a win at home, get a point on the road, but at the very least, it feels like Minnesota United right now it feel like they're going in a direction, and the results feel collective and connected. Whereas maybe before, it felt a little sporadic and random sometimes, the kind of performances we were seeing. So I think that's a pretty big silver lining to take away from these last 2 games.
Yeah, it's a weird juxtaposition to try to balance because obviously this is a results-based business, right? Sports is very results based. If you don't get results, you're not going to make the playoffs. You're not going to keep your job if you're a coach or a front office member. There's a lot of things you need to get results in order to, keep going in the right direction. At the same time, though, you would hope that good performances in the long term would welcome better results. And I think you see in RSL and Austin specifically 2 pretty good performances from this team. And you're talking about a team without Robin Lod, without Emmanuel Reynoso, without Bisogno Dibassy currently. Both Ray and Dibassy look to be on the way back here pretty soon, which is really, really good for this team. Obviously, they'll be welcome additions. But I think the performances are worthy of more points. I think Adrian Heath sort of echoed that sentiment in both post-game press conferences, specifically the match in Austin. You get really unlucky. You hit 4 posts and have 2 goals called back for offsides. Sometimes that's just how the cookie crumbles. But at the same time, performance-wise, I think you are feeling really good about where this team is heading, especially considering you have 2 big pieces that are going to be reintegrated into the group and back in the lineup as early as this Saturday with Emmanuel Reynoso and Bisogno Dibassy. Heath, after the match in Austin on Wednesday, said that Dibassy definitely will not be ready for Saturday, but could be ready here in the next couple weeks. He did say there is a possibility of Emmanuel Reynoso making the bench on Saturday, which is, it's been kind of an up and down sort of roller coaster in terms of Reynoso's status, because he's coming back, he's working his way back, but he's not reintegrating with the group because he needs to get fit. And even when he's fit, he still isn't reintegrating with the group fully. And then all of a sudden, boom, he reintegrates with the group late last week. Doesn't make the trip to Austin, obviously, but obviously Heath is like what he's seen. He actually said Ray has had, quote, ridiculous quality in training sessions so far. So obviously he likes what he sees enough from a quality and a fitness standpoint to potentially put Ray on the team sheet on Saturday, which would be absolutely huge for a team that's just kind of really missing that creative goal creating piece.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this Toronto game, if it goes the way it probably should on paper at least, would probably provide a good opportunity to bring Ray on in the second half and have a game where Minnesota can be pretty dominant. He can have some time on the ball, perhaps create some things. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a big opportunity. And even, to be honest, if he makes the bench and doesn't play, I think there's still a statement being made by him being on the bench that is productive. We talked about in the past couple of weeks when we talked about his return, the video that the team made, all this sort of stuff. I've said before that the last piece of the puzzle, I think, really to mend the fences on this one is just for him to play again, and to actually be a plain rostered loon again. So for that to happen as soon as Saturday, I think would be a really good benchmark for this team to hit and for him to hit individually. That being said, I don't expect him to play a lot of minutes, and I don't necessarily think that's necessary. But yeah, no, it's exciting to think that we might be seeing Reynoso playing at Allianz Field pretty soon.
Yeah. One player we might not be seeing play at Allianz Field. Actually, before we get to that, let's touch on this Toronto match a little further. So the Loons end their 9-match and 29-game stretch Saturday at home, or 9-match and 29-day stretch, Saturday at home against Toronto FC. Toronto really struggling despite having 2 of the 4 highest paid players in the league, I believe. They currently sit 13th in the Eastern Conference. So a really rough start for Toronto here. I mean, I guess it isn't really a start at this point. We're almost at the halfway point in matches played. So not a good early portion of the campaign for Toronto. So you're thinking Minnesota United back at home. With even if Reynoso's, as you mentioned, even Reynoso's on the bench and doesn't play, you have to think that at least would give Minnesota some sort of lift in terms of the morale, in terms of their energy level, in terms of the crowd's energy level to see Ray on the team sheet. So we'll have to see how that goes. But again, one player who we might not see Saturday, or probably likely not to see on the team sheet on Saturday at this point, he wasn't in the team sheet Wednesday night in Austin, is Luis Amarilla, as he is reportedly on the move to Mazatlan FC in Liga MX. This was reported after the final whistle. I was laying in my bed about ready to go to sleep, and all of a sudden I see this come across my Twitter feed. Cesar Luis Merlot, he's an Argentine reporter, reported that the Loons are set to send the striker to the Liga MX club for an undisclosed transfer fee. That report has since been echoed and confirmed by Andy Grader of the Pioneer Press and Tom Bogert of the Athletic. Dom, you guys didn't get a chance to touch on this in post Loons last night because obviously it was breaking as you guys were going. So I'll kind of, what are your initial reactions to this news? Obviously long rumored at this point that Amarilla would be on the outs over the last couple weeks. We finally get some sort of confirmation here that is indeed the case.
Yeah, I guess first of all, it's just interesting to see the team actually move forward with this because obviously, as we've discussed in the past, Amarilla has been kind of winning the battle for minutes at striker. So it's interesting to see a player who's been winning that battle, with the exception of this Austin game, which obviously he wasn't taking part in. Still end up having them pull the trigger to send him away. I guess I'd be curious what the angles of that are. How do I put this? I guess I'd be curious how much say. I'm curious if this is a move that Adrian Heath wants to happen, because Adrian Heath seemed to want to play Amarilla. So I'm a little curious what the breakdown of all that is. And how long this deal has been manifesting. That all being said, I think it's an interesting destination for him. It's not a particularly successful club in Liga MX yet, but it's also a very new team. Mazatlan are actually a moved franchise. A couple of years ago, they were playing in a different city. So that's a pretty new team. And I think it's a good opportunity for him to go somewhere else and just try to revamp things, refine his form. But I think there's been discussion, frankly, for a while now about whether or not Amarilla should be starting, and it's interesting to see the team now make the real call of whether he should be on the team or not. I didn't necessarily, when we were talking about whether or not he should start, I wasn't necessarily thinking that the backbone of all that was, well, maybe they should get rid of him completely, but it's interesting to see that happen. And of course, now there's some rumors about, how they'll replace him. But it's too bad for his time at Minnesota to kind of end on this note. But it definitely felt like a player that was getting more opportunity than perhaps he was earning on the field. So I do think it's good that other people will now have an opportunity to play up front instead of him.
Yeah, and look, Amarilla's been struggling. There's no way around saying that. He's played almost 750 league minutes this season, has not found a goal from open play. I think I've asked Heath about this numerous times in press conferences and in training. He's said, and this carries some weight, that, hey, the best way to get a striker out of their funk is to keep calling upon them, keep showing them confidence, keep picking them, and keep giving them the opportunity to turn it around. But the question I've always been asking is, at what point have you given, at what point is that scenario where, okay, we've given you all the chances we can, now we got to turn the page and move on to somebody else who could potentially help us out? Maybe they've reached that point, or maybe this is the front office, as you mentioned, just putting the pressure on, saying, hey, we need to move on and try to find somebody who's going to score goals and is going to contribute to the attack. It's really unfortunate. Amarilla had a really great, I think, 9 or 10 game stretch last year where he scored 10 goals, scored 6 goals, added 5 assists. That was in Minnesota United's run last year, where they had the best record in the league over that course of time in the summer. We're up to 3rd in the Western Conference table before obviously their crash and burn at the end of the season. But it's unfortunate. I think Amarilla is somebody everybody wanted to see succeed. I think we were really excited to see him come back before the 2022 season. After showing some signs of real quality early in the 2020 campaign before COVID. And it just something that it didn't work out. His confidence was completely shot by the end. And this seems to be the right move for the club. Now you look ahead and you're entering a summer transfer window where not only do you get a DP back in Emmanuel Reynoso, but you have a designated player spot at your disposal in terms of bringing somebody new in that can actually make an impact to this team. And the rumor swirling is that that player that they are looking to bring in is former Norwich City striker and current free agent Teemu Pukki, who has, he's a very decorated striker for Norwich City. He's played for them during their time in both getting promoted up to the Premier League, in the Premier League, getting sent back down to the Championship. He's scored double-digit goals in each of those seasons, whether it's in the Prem or in the Championship. So he knows how to score at a lot of different high levels. He is 33 years old, so there is the age factor there. But look, at the end of the day, he's somebody who has shown and knows how to put the ball in the back of the net. And that is somebody that Minnesota needs, and he kind of fits the profile of what Heath is looking to bring in as a striker. Dom, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on Amarilla's departure, or if you want to move on and see what you think about Teemu Pukki potentially coming in to Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, on Pukki, I would say, and we talked a little bit about this last night, but just that, I think everyone would have liked to get Teemu Pukki a couple of years ago instead of 33, but I still think that he presents good value to any team he's on, particularly at this level. Brings a lot of leadership, a lot of experience to a front line that is pretty young right now, particularly with Lod's injury and Reynoso being not quite active yet, and Amarilla's potential departure. So, I think he provides something there. I think he perhaps provides a little more of a natural striking option than, say, Garcia yet, at least. And so, yeah, I mean, if the team can make the move in a responsible way, I think that it's a good move to make. I think, it's probably a short-term move. It's not a guy that you're, signing on for the next 6 years. It's going to be short-term, but if he can come in, I believe Jacob was the one that said this last night. If he can come in and score, in the handful of months that he would be here for this season, if he can score like 10 goals, that's 10 goals that can completely change the outlook of the Minnesota attack. So, yep. If they don't make the move, I don't necessarily think it's like a horrible thing that they didn't make the move. But if they can bring him in, I think he has the potential to be really helpful, especially with a Minnesota United team that right now feels like they're kind of teetering back and forth between being like a strong playoff competitor and a weaker playoff competitor. I think he could make a difference there.
Yeah, and Minnesota, I think, has, and you can't necessarily fault them for doing this, but in the past, I think they've really tried to go for more like bang for buck type of transfers, right? Where they're really to get somebody who's younger or who's on the more affordable side that could still potentially make a certain level of impact. But I think looking at where they rank salary wise in MLS after the latest salary dump, where they are middle of the pack, actually closer to the bottom part of that middle pack, and seeing what they've been able to produce results wise with that, they've outperformed their salary ranking pretty much every single year since the 2019 season, at least. So that you just have to wonder what they would think if they actually spent and actually invested and not that they're not investing, but actually, really took a flyer, really took a big leap and hard investment into a goal scoring striker. And Teemu Pukki seems to fit that. Again, he's 33 years old, so he's been on the older side, but he's shown that he can do it on a lot of different high level stages. So that seems to be moving forward, and that seems to be the name that Minnesota are looking to target and bring in to sort of replace Luis Amarilla come the July transfer window. So we will have to see how that plays itself out. Any final thoughts on that, Dom, before we move on?
No, just that, yeah, again, I think it'd be an interesting move. Frankly, the one thing about the move that is too bad is that Robin Lod will be injured probably the entire time. Yeah. And that would have been a really interesting connection to have. Obviously, those two guys have been part of a Finnish national team group that has really, in some people's opinion, overperformed. So, that's probably the one sort of unfortunate asterisk if Teemu Pukki did arrive. But yeah, again, I think it's a signing that would have a lot of good potential for the team.
Yeah, it's funny because it seems like, let's say Minnesota United brings in Teemu Pukki, right? Then you also have Emmanuel Reynoso. Then you have Bongi Hlongwani on the right, then or the left, wherever they decide to play him. Then you can move Fragapane back to his more natural position. Joseph Rosales is showing that he can contribute in the attack as well. And then you have the defensive midfield, which the combination of Trapp, Dotson, and Arriaga, whatever combination you want to use of those three, seems to be really working. Dotson Trapp seems to be the one that's really clicking right now. So every place that Robin Lod would play, they seem to be finding another guy who can kind of step up in that position. When you get Emmanuel Reynoso back. That number 10, that central midfield slot seems to be the one where they're lacking right now, but obviously Reynoso will take that over. So, you're still feeling really good. Obviously, having Lod in there would be great for depth purposes. Having him slot in there and having one of those starters in his place sort of be that depth option. But at the same time, I think with that designated spot in hand, with Emmanuel Reynoso coming back now, I think with Bisogno Dibassy coming back and potentially holding down the left side of the back line for Minnesota, I think that's really, you're feeling very optimistic as you move towards the summer that, hey, if this team can be 7th in the West, produce the results that they've done, have the road quality that they've had without all these pieces in place, you're feeling with those pieces in place, with those returners, once they get a new DP in, you're feeling really good about what the second half of the season can provide Minnesota. And we're feeling really good about telling you about our friends over at Stimulus Athletic, because they can make you look, feel, and play good this season or next season or in the fall or in the winter, whenever you want, with quality game gear and apparel. And this isn't just some generic stuff that you get off the rack. This isn't some, striped, sashed jersey. Nothing against striped and sashed jerseys, but these are customized, personalized game gear and apparel that you can wear and be proud of. And guess what? Your team and your community and the fans and the parents of your players, they're going to want to get their hands on this stuff too, because we're talking quality custom designed game gear and apparel that won't break your budget. For a lot of clubs, apparel, game gear, jerseys, it's an expense in their budget. It's an expense line item. With Stimulus Athletic, they flip that script, because not only can you outfit your players, but you can sell with their ability to make a custom store for your team. You can actually sell your jerseys, sell apparel to your fans, to your community, to the parents of your players, to people around. Heck, if it looks really good, throw it up on Twitter and see if the soccer community wants to buy it. That's something that Stimulus Athletic provides that you're not going to get really in many other places. Your ability to turn that game gear and apparel from an expense line item to income. You actually can turn a profit with your game gear and apparel with Stimulus Athletic. So take that next step and see what they're all about. StimulusAthletic.com. You can see it below here if you're watching on the YouTube. STIMULUS Athletic.com. Click that Get Started button and just fill out some information about yourself and your club, and make sure you let them know that Jeremy and Dom from 10K and Soda Soccer sent you there. Big thanks to our friends at Stimulus Athletic. Also, should mention that they are Minneapolis-based. It's actually former Minnesota United player Jason Mora, who is the owner of Stimulus Athletic. They support teams like Minneapolis City as well. So make sure you're supporting them if you are a team looking for new game gear and apparel this summer, fall, winter, next year. Doesn't matter. StimulusAthletic.com. All right, let's jump into the lower league scene. We'll start in MLS Next Pro with MNUFC 2. The Doubloons win 3-2 at home against the LA Galaxy on May 24th. Goals for Britton Fisher, Emmanuel Iwe, and Juan Mosquera. And then they fall 4-1 to Colorado Rapids on the 28th. Cameron Dunbar notching Minnesota's only goal there. But let's take a stop here at the USLW League, Dom, because Minnesota Aurora continue a dominant opening run here, first few games. Following that 5-0 opening win against Rochester at TCO Stadium, Aurora go on the road over the weekend, get a 4-0 win over Chicago Dutch Lions. Then they come back to TCO and absolutely smash RKC Third Coast 10-0. This is now a 3-0-0 start for Aurora. 19 goals scored, none conceded. Initial thoughts, Dom?
I mean, it is essentially a perfect start for Minnesota Aurora. I'm sure there's some stat they did badly, but I don't know what it is. No, it's a near perfect start. I mean, particularly up front, just scoring goal after goal, and of course those clean sheets, very nice as well. I mean, if there was any question of whether or not we'd see a similar run to last year from Minnesota Aurora, I think that has been answered. They're almost certainly going to be well, first of all, competing for the playoffs and then competing in the playoffs in a deep run, most likely. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's been such a dominant start. It's been such a confident start. It's frankly a much better start than I expected. I expected them to be very good this year. I certainly did not expect them to score 19 goals in 3 games. And yeah, frankly, a lot of the teams that they're playing right now just feel like they're getting walked off the park a little bit.
Yep.
I mean, the 10-0 particularly. So yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting start. Obviously, if you're an Aurora fan, it's a great start. I think for the rest of the conference, it's probably more of a, well, what the hell are we going to do when we go to play them start?
Yep.
So yeah, it's creates quite a predicament for the rest of the teams they have to play really for the rest of the season.
excuse me. Wow, getting all choked up talking about Aurora here. Maya Hansen with the hat trick and the 10-0 victory over RKC. She has 6 goals on the season. I have to take a dig at my friend Matt Pravatsky from Equal Time Soccer. He put a little piece before the season, list of his predictions for the season. And he predicted that no Aurora player would get to 10 goals because he just thought the goals would come from so many different places that no player would be able to reach that mark. Maya Hansen has 6 goals already through 3 matches. So, I mean, but at the same time, he was right in the fact that goals are coming from a lot of different places. In that 10-0 win, 6 different Aurora players scored. In addition to Hansen, Cat Rapp has been huge in the early portion of the season. Between Hansen and Rapp, actually, the two have combined for 24 points so far this season, 9 goals and 6 assists between the two of them. So, yeah, it's a mixture of returning players. It's a mixture of new players that are really putting it together. The cohesion on the pitch is something that I think sets them apart from a lot of, and it's weird because they had a lot of new pieces come in, and the lineups are mixed and matched between, you have your entire middle of the park is basically new for Minnesota, for Aurora. But you have a lot of returners there as well, and everybody seems to just be clicking seamlessly on the pitch. I mean, the way they move the ball, the way they advance the ball, the positioning, the speed is just something that you're not seeing many other teams. You're not going to see many other teams that are able to keep up with that. I think I tweeted after the first match, I was like, who's going to hang with this team? Nobody has proven they can hang with Aurora yet. Now, they haven't played Green Bay, who gave them problems last year. And then obviously once you get into the playoffs, you're going to be playing some of those more dominant teams from other conferences. So I think that's when we'll get the real measuring stick and the bar of where Minnesota fits in this league nationally. But as far as the Heartland division, it is it's pure dominance so far, and there's really no other way to put it. And we'll see. Maybe another team will step up and give Aurora a run for their money. I have to imagine there may be a game where Aurora is just not fully on it and may find themselves in a battle late on over the course of the regular season. But continued performances like this, really, you start to look elsewhere around the conference, and you're like, okay, who's gonna even get close here?
Yeah, I suppose you wonder if maybe on the road to Green Bay, something like that, that could prove more difficult. But yeah, no, I mean, I think I don't know if anybody's putting bets on the USLW League, but I think they're a safe bet to win their conference and almost certainly make at least a deep run in the playoffs, if not win the whole thing. They look about as good as ever and probably better than last year. So. Yeah, I mean, scary stuff for anybody that has to play them this year.
Yep, and that next team is Rochester, who host Aurora on Saturday, and then Aurora will be back at TCO Stadium June 7th, which I believe is next Wednesday. Just checking the calendar. Yep, it is. Next Wednesday, June 7th, against the Chicago Dutch Lions. Of course, all the matches are streamed by Fox 9 and on Fox 9 Plus. That's another note, I think, quick. The broadcast quality is awesome this year. Jake Griffith and Danny Foxhoven are a great duo. And the obviously the quality on the pitch, but also the quality in the broadcast really measures up with, I think, what we've come to expect from this Aurora team. And I think this might also be not the problem, but also kind of they're pushing this league forward and pushing other teams to, perform in a more professional manner, both on and off the pitch. And at least, both on and off the pitch for Aurora. I'm talking myself in circles here, but the TV broadcast, everything, the way Aurora goes about themselves, they are a professional club, and we're kind of seeing that professional quality on the pitch as well. And it may seem as if, Aurora may be destined for brighter things and, if you will, greener pastures in the future.
Yeah, no, I mean, I to call back to a conversation we had a long time ago. This team feels like it doesn't want to be amateur.
Yes.
So we'll have to see. We'll have to see if a couple more 10-0s maybe convince some people to make some decisions. But yep.
I have the audio clip saved from like November 2021, Dom, when we were talking about this. The moment that Aurora makes that jump, because it's going to happen. Let's get real. It's going to happen. The moment they make that jump, I'm going to put that audio clip out on Twitter and be like, we told you long time ago that this is going to be the case. But anyways, a really dominant start for Aurora. And then elsewhere in the W League, we had Green Bay Glory going on the road to Rochester and beating Rochester 2-0. So continuing a rough start to the W League debut for Rochester in their first 3 games. We did see something interesting, though, in this one, something I don't think I've ever seen before. So this might have been a bit of a harsh decision from the ref, but Green Bay is taking a goal kick. And the Green Bay keeper sort of taps the ball before she actually kicks it away. And the referee whistles her for, I guess that's an infraction. I didn't even realize that was an infraction, but I guess it makes sense if it's a dead ball play. An infraction. And so Rochester got an indirect free kick from like 7 yards out. And so what Green Bay had to do is just completely pack the goal post to post with players and create this sort of wall along the goal line to stop the kick. Rochester wasn't able to score off of it. But it was just, I've never seen anything like that before. I mean, I've seen indirect free kicks before. I know they're rare, but I've seen them before, but nothing like that close directly in the center of the goal.
Yeah, it is an odd one. I mean, the call by the ref is legit because you can't pass to yourself from a dead ball. And that's essentially what the keeper did. That first touch is the free kick. So, I mean, it's harsh, but it is legit. It looked weird in the picture that Rochester posted online of what essentially looked like they were lining up to shake hands. A lineup of the Green Bay players along the goal line was very odd. But, I mean, hey, I guess it worked because Rochester did score. So, applauds to Green Bay on the strategy. But, rough start for Rochester. I mean, to be fair, their first couple games have basically been against the best teams. We'll have to see if they can pick up some more points against some of the other sort of more struggling sides. But a tough start for them. I think the tough start probably looks worse because the other team in the state is beating teams 10-0. But I think it's sort of the name of the game when you join a league like this and you're making a big jump. Of course, Rochester FC did not have a women's team of this level previously. They obviously had the UPSL men's team. They did not have a WPSL women's team or anything like that. So they're also a little newer to that side of things. But it seems like they have a good squad. It seems like they have some potential. I'm sure they'll get some results this season. But tough stuff for them.
All right, moving over to USL League 2 now. It's the first ever Battle of the Birds, and it was a stalemate, a 1-1 draw as Rochester hosted Minneapolis City for the first ever meeting between those two clubs. Minneapolis City's first point of the 2023 campaign. Rochester, though, they're kind of the little brother, if you will, if you want to say, as the new kids on the block in this league. So a home draw against Minneapolis City, I don't think it's something they'll turn their nose at Eli Goldman with an early goal for Minneapolis City to put them ahead. Pedro Pajares, the Brazilian, equalizes later on in the first half, and that is it as the match ends 1-1. Dom, what are your takeaways from this one?
Yeah, it's an interesting game. It's funny. The first thing that not the first thing that actually I guess would be the last thing, but the thing that comes to mind with me is I thought was funny is almost as soon as this game was over, both teams were obviously posting the content for the end of the match, and both were essentially describing it as like, well, we were hard done. We should have won that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, well, guys, I don't think that's how that works. I think one of you has to be the one that was hard done and could have won that one. But yeah, I think that reflects that this was a pretty competitive game between these two teams. That they both went for it. Obviously, both ended up getting a goal, and both scored within the first hour or even the first half of the game. So there was a lot of goalless time later on in this game. I think for Rochester, as much as they would like to have won their home game against Minneapolis City, I think this is the better point for them. I think they already had a win, so they have 4 points from 2 games. I think they've only played 2 games. So that's a pretty good start. Brand new to the league, undefeated after 2. For Minneapolis City, obviously, your first point is good. It's good to get a point on the road. To have 1 point from 4 games is not great. It's not particularly good. And so while it's a good point on the road, I think they're arguably the team that would have wanted to make that 2-1 more. So, I mean, I think both teams have positive and negative takeaways from this one. Yeah, for Minneapolis City, I suppose the big one is just like, all right, well, we've gotten rid of this losing streak. We've got a point now. We can build off this. We're returning home. They're returning home to play Bavarians, who are currently the worst team in the division. So potentially the ability to build some momentum there. But yeah, no, a really interesting meeting of these two teams, and sort of some positive and negatives for both of them to share.
All right. Elsewhere, we have the NPSL now, where we have one team sort of sticking their neck out above the rest. Med City with a couple of rough results last week, so they kind of fall behind a little bit. And Duluth FC, a 6-0 win over Joy, a 1-0 win over Med City in that first meeting between the two clubs. They seem to be the ones to beat once again. I guess not once again. Med City won the conference last year, but Duluth is always in that top tier. Yeah. They always have been, and they're there once again. And it's catch me if you can, I guess, for Duluth right now in the NPSL North.
Yeah, I think the Med City Twin Stars game, which was what was it, midweek last week, was or actually no, it was the weekend. Was an interesting one. I went to that one. Twin Stars ended up winning that one 2-0. It was a very interesting matchup. I actually was really impressed by the way Twin Stars played. Particularly, actually, the player that stood out to me was actually Anthony Mator, who is the right back for the Twin Stars. He's actually a former Minnesota United Academy guy. He actually played for MN UFC 2 in one game in 2022. He really impressed me. I mean, he really looked like he was playing below his level, frankly, and he was really dominant in that game. And Twin Stars really did a good job of managing Med City. That very much set up then this game in Duluth. Med City did a very good job in Duluth of playing their game. They played very defensive and they controlled the game. They made Duluth wait a long time to score their goal. It was about the hour mark when the goal eventually went in. I do think that in both games, their desire to defend first and attack second just didn't quite work. I think that last year they were getting goals so consistently from those opportunities that the system just sort of worked itself out. But this year, they just aren't really doing that. In this game against Duluth, I don't particularly recall any time where it felt like they were going to score. And some of that was good defending, but also some of that was just them not really having much offensive action. And so Duluth sort of was able to call the bluff on that one, and they end up getting a late goal from Liam Pritchardson. So yeah, I mean it's a big win for Duluth, ahead of Med City by I think 8 points now. The team that really looks still in reach of competing with Duluth for that top spot is actually the Dakota Fusion, who are 5 points. Dakota did not play midweek, so they're 5 points behind Duluth, but they play this weekend. And so I think that's potentially a big game to watch out for. I think the good thing for Med City is that because of the format change, Duluth can't win the conference without winning the playoffs. So Med City will essentially kind of maybe have to, well, first of all, they play at home still, maybe do something there, but then maybe just hope for a switch around in the playoffs to flip the table a little bit. But yeah, no, I mean, big week for the Twin Stars. Two wins, suddenly 6 points. They're in fourth place. Joy had a good win over Sioux Falls, who unfortunately have been struggling quite a bit. They've yet to win a game. But yeah, no, I mean, NPSL North looking very interesting. And I think the playoff format change actually keeps it more interesting because Duluth otherwise looked quite dominant. But I think the question is, will that translate potentially into these one-off games if they have to play the Fusion or Med City in a tough matchup?
And now to the WPSL, the 100-meter dash. That is the WPSL season. It goes just as quick as it starts. We have a few results. Salvo 1-1 with Sioux Falls City. St. Croix with a 3-0 win over Joy. Joy then getting on the win column with a 3-0 win over Rochester United. And then Minnesota Thunder doubling up Manitou 4-2. Any big takeaways from you, Dom, in the WPSL slate?
Just that, I think it's interesting. Joy won week 1 as well, so they do have 2 wins from 3 games, although their one loss is a tough one. So I mean, Salvo and Sioux Falls are both kind of those teams you expect to compete, so interesting that they draw each other and neither really get a leg up. And the Minnesota Thunder, yeah, kind of announcing themselves. That's their first game of the season, 4-2 on the road. So, it seems like several of the sort of usual powers look ready to compete. Sioux Falls and Joy both look, like they're going to be competitive, whether or not they can really break into that title race. But yeah, no, I mean, the WPSL is a marathon, so it's going to be interesting to see within a week or two how the title campaign really takes shape.
And the UPSL. This is
Yes.
quite crowded at the top of the UPSL. So here's how the run of games went. Minneapolis City, 2-0 win over Austin Villa. St. Croix, 4-0 dominance over the Blackhawks of St. Paul. 2-2 is how Twin City and Granite City finished. Vlora gets a 4-1 win over Maplebrook and then follows that up with a 2-1 win over Austin Villa. Minneapolis City blanks Worthington 3-0. FC Minneapolis with a 1-0 shutout over Granite City. St. Croix 5-0 over Superior City, and 2-2 between Twin City and Maplebrook. So, Dom, this means we have 3 teams atop the UPSL table with Minneapolis City, St. Croix, and Superior City FC. And then a lot of teams down there in striking distance as well. Yeah. Tell me about the UPSL and kind of the way this is shaking out here.
Yeah, that St. Croix Superior City result's a pretty big one. It's Superior City's first loss of the season. It's only the second game this whole season they've dropped points. They had 1 draw also. And St. Croix, have very much been in the last couple of weeks sort of announcing themselves in the UPSL with these big wins. They had 2 big wins this last week. They are tentatively top of the table on goal difference over Minneapolis City. Superior City tied on points. They have played an additional game, so technically they lose that tiebreaker. Yeah, those 3 have all been playing very well. Superior City, perhaps, meeting some sort of limit with this St. Croix result, but it'll be interesting to see if they can bounce back quickly. Vlora are right below this group, potential to jump in there with some good results. The Blackhawks have looked really good. Unfortunately, results like that St. Croix one kind of put questions as to whether or not they can really jump into that group of sort of top 3, top 4. Very much in distance, though. And then some sort of one-off interesting things. The Worthington 3-0 loss to Minneapolis City. Worthington got 3 red cards in that game. I don't know all the details of that. I know one involved like a goalkeeper challenge on an attacker. I think like a dog so kind of situation. So that's a tough one for Worthington. They'll have to grow from that one. But credit to Minneapolis City for sort of capitalizing on the opportunity and getting a good win there. And Twin City, I have to point out, Twin City with a good week, 2 draws. This is a team that is not necessarily expecting to compete for playoff spots. They had a draw earlier in the season, a sort of shock draw with Valora. That was a 0-0. So two draws this last week. Some goals for them. I think that's a nice development for them, a nice show of progression for them, showing that they're not going to be an easy team to beat. But yeah, no, I mean the games are coming quick in the UPSL. A lot of action, title race very much starting to take shape with sort of 4 or 5 teams, and St. Croix really starting to look like they're ready to compete with Minneapolis City for the big honors this season. But we'll have to see how the rest of the regular season plays out.
All right, and then to round it out, UPSL women, Valora doubles up St. Croix 2-1. Tonka with a big 11-0 win. 0-0 draw between St. Croix and Northern Thai, and then Superior City blanks Valora 2-0. What are some of the trends we're seeing in the inaugural UPSL women's season here locally, Dom?
Well, we're seeing that the Tonka Fusion are very good.
Yeah.
They are top of the table. There's only a couple of games played, but they are top of the table. And I actually forgot to note that game was against Granite City. Their win. Yeah, Tonka started very well. Obviously, that's an organization that has a good reputation, but maybe slight surprise just in the sense that they're new to this level of the game. Didn't necessarily quite expect them to be blowing everybody out of the water like this, but they are. They saw Minnesota Aurora and said, "We can do that. Yep. We can do it better." Valora, good win for them. They had a rough start and a rough later this week, but they had 2 rough losses on either side of their win to Superior City. But good win against St. Croix kind of keeps the wheels turning. And Superior City actually also, worth shouting out. That is another new team to this level, another new team entirely, and they've started well. They have 2 wins and 1 loss. Their 1 loss is to Tonka, unless I'm mistaken. So good start for them. Yeah, the UPSL Women's Conference for the Midwest West is small. It's only 5 or 6 teams, but it looks pretty competitive. Tonka very much look ahead of the race. So it's going to be interesting to see if Superior can perhaps do better in a rematch with Tonka, or if Valora can maybe get a leg up on Tonka and compact that table a little bit more. But yeah, it's been an interesting start so far to the new UPSL women's division up here.
All right, now it's time to round out the show like we always do with our picks presented by BettorEdge, BETTOR edge.com/loons. You type that in, you sign up, you'll notice in your account, boom, like magic, $20 appears that you can use to bet with your friends, against your friends, with us, against us. You can use that towards our weekly MLS Pick'em contest. If you're into the NBA Finals, if you're into the Stanley Cup Finals, into Major League Baseball, whatever else sports are happening right now, there are Pick'em contests and games that you can wager with or against your friends on. And that is what sets BettorEdge apart from the rest. They are not a sports book. They do not profit off of your loss. You are betting with or against other people on the platform when you are placing a wager on BettorEdge. That is why it is legal to use in Minnesota and 46 other states. So BettorEdge, BETTOR edge.com/loons. Click that link and sign up to get $20 bucks. Either way, $20 in your account at BettorEdge when you sign up. Big thanks to BettorEdge for supporting the show. All right, Dom. So Minnesota United, no surprise, big favorite at home, over +200 or over -200 against Toronto, over under 2.5 goals there. What are you going with?
I am going to go with over 2.5 on this one. This feels like a game that's going to have a couple of goals in it.
Yeah, even though the value isn't exactly there, I think Minnesota really clamoring for that. They have a home win this season, but they really the team has talked so much about needing to turn that home form around and at least balance it out with how well they're doing on the road. And with Toronto, just with the Insigne drama, which I think, look, whatever the timeline is for that MLS sort of Drive to Survive type documentary that they're going to be putting out on Apple TV, they need to get the cameras to Toronto now, because you have the highest paid player in the league and one of the most well-known coaches in American soccer history going at it, basically. And she said that would be perfect for this documentary. So I hope there are crews out in Toronto getting the backstage on this situation, because that's exactly what that docuseries needs. But anyways, aside from that, with that being said, that is a reason why I think Minnesota can take advantage of Toronto. Toronto's very distracted. They're just not a great overall team looking so far this season. Minnesota at home at Allianz Field. It's going to be, I think, a beautiful Saturday night at Allianz Field. So I think you'll have the 19,000 plus there cheering the Loons on. I think that they continue to turn the tide in terms of their home form, and they get back in the win front against Toronto. So even though the value is not there, I am placing my monies on Minnesota United. Dom is taking over 2.5 goals. Whether you're with us or against us, whether you want to ride us or fade us, or whether you just want to enter our MLS Pick'em contest, we have free and paid versions available at bettoredge.com/loons. Dom, we have come to the end of the episode, and we have come to the point where you send the people into their weekend with some words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom. How I want to phrase this. Well, here's my words of wisdom. Sure, hopefully you'll know what I'm talking about here. If your claims about something are already barely on one leg, don't use my tweets to back your thing up.
Yes. I loved Dom with the receipts on Twitter this week. That was probably my favorite thing that happened. We didn't talk about it because we don't get in the mud too much.
No, I'm not interested in talking about more than that.
But if you want to know, you want to see some good Minnesota lower league soccer drama on the Twitter sphere, if you're into that, make sure you check out Dominic's Twitter feed at DJ Bisogno. He's got the receipts. If you come at the king, you best not miss. That's what we'll do for. Actually, I do want to make one more note. We talked about Amarilla, and a lot of the talk about Amarilla is negative about his performance on the pitch. Yeah. I don't know if this is going to happen now, but he was, to peel back the curtain a little bit, he was supposed to do something really, really nice for somebody close to me, who is also from Paraguay. Is supposed to do something really nice for them, and that was supposed to happen this Saturday after the match in Toronto. I don't know if that's going to happen anymore. I don't even know if he's going to be with the team. But all that to say, I want to make sure we compartmentalize the person from the player here, because for all intents and purposes, Amarilla was a great teammate. He was a really great person. It was really cool to see at training him learn more English, and actually he always, as he got more comfortable with his English, he insisted on doing interviews without a translator, which I thought was really cool, and kind of he took that challenge. So I want to make sure I just note that, if this is the last time we talk about Luis Amarilla as a Minnesota United player, I want to make sure we ended on a note that obviously we wish him all the best and hope that he's able to turn his form around on the pitch. And I want to make sure that seems, for all intents and purposes, from what I've seen in training and from what I've heard from other people, a really good human being, a really great person. And we wish him all the best moving forward in his presumed new role with Mazatlan FC in Liga MX. All right. He's Dominic Bisogno. I'm Jeremy Rushing. This has been the 10,000 Pitches Podcast, and we will see y'all next week. Bye.